March 2006. Not much has changed over the last month or so. I'm still working at Norlake Manufacturing, still living in North Ridgeville, still reading books. Only 4 books this month, but that's one more than in February of 2006. Let's jump in and see what I read back in March 2006. The first book, Perfect Dark, Initial Vector by Greg Rucka. This is a book based on the video game Perfect Dark Zero. It's actually a continuation of the game, of the story in the game. Our main character is Joanna Dark. This takes place in the far future time of 2020. And corporations have basically taken over everything. Gosh, I have no idea what that's like. Corporations have taken over everything, and they're basically at war with each other in the boardroom and with soldiers. So Joanna Dark is one of those sort of mercenary soldiers, and she's always going up against this place called Datadyne, I believe it is. But you know, even though she's young, her soul is old and weary. But she runs into this guy that also has a vendetta against Datadyne. She doesn't really trust him, but then some information comes to light that could bring Datadyne down. Say that 3 times fast. So that's basically what it is. I've never played the video game, wasn't familiar with it. The only reason I read this is because it was written by Greg Rucka. You may have noticed I didn't hold up a book, even though I have, I think, just about everything Greg Rucka's written, book-wise, but I don't have a copy of this. And I may pick one up, reread it. I do love Greg Rucka very much. But so I guess if you're a fan of the game, probably enjoy the book. If you're a fan of Greg Rucka, you might enjoy his writing. If you're not a fan of this type of story, I don't know that his writing is going to make you enjoy it. And I really don't remember anything about it. But that's Perfect Dark, Initial Vector, Greg Rucka. All that information I gave you was from the descriptions that I read. Next up, Paths Not Taken by Simon R. Green. This is the 5th book in the Nightside series. Our main character is John Taylor, who has the ability to find anything. And so you could, whether it's your lost car keys or the meaning of your life, apparently he can find anything. And the Nightside is this, according to the thing that I just read, it's a square mile sort of hidden in the middle of London. That's monsters and magic and all that kind of stuff. It's not the world as we know it. John Taylor is from there. He got out, but then he was pulled back in the first book in the series. And in the last book, he's recently discovered his mother is an ancient being, and she created the Nightside. She has now decided that she's going to destroy the Nightside. So John Taylor has to find a way to stop her, which is going to involve time traveling into the past. I really dig this series. This is one that I want to repurchase all the books. I never had all of the series, but all the books that I had initially had and read, I'd like to repurchase those, get the rest of the series. Really enjoyable for urban fantasy, one of my favorite series in that subgenre. I've talked about wanting to pick up the Dresden Files as well and reread what I've read and finish that series. This would come first, the Nightside. And they're smaller, they're quick reads, really, really fun. John Taylor's a fun character. A lot of the other recurring characters are, as I remember, are a lot of fun. Good stuff. Paths Not Taken, Simon R. Green. The penultimate book that I read in March 2006. This is another quick list. The 2-Minute Rule by Robert Crace. Robert Crace is best known for his Elvis Cole private detective series. This is not an Elvis Cole novel. The 2-minute rule is basically during a robbery, you have 2 minutes before the cops show up. If you take more than 2 minutes, you're screwed, for the most part. Our main character here is Max Holman. He broke the 2-minute rule and went to prison, but he's getting out of prison, and on his first day of parole, he wants to reconnect with his son, who grew up to be a cop, and he finds out that his son was killed. And not just killed, but it looks like it was a murder for revenge. So Max Holman is going to get a little bit of revenge of his own. Good stuff. I really like Robert Crace and the Elvis Cole series, and I enjoy it when an author who has just an ongoing series with an ongoing character hops out of that for a minute and just does a standalone novel here and there. And, if they're a good author, in my opinion, generally, if you're a fan of their series, you're probably going to enjoy their standalone stuff as well. And this is a very enjoyable book, The 2-Minute Rule by Robert Crace. And the last book that I read in March of 2006 was 30 Days of Night, Rumors of the Undead by Steve Niles and Jeff Marriott. This is a follow-up to 30 Days of Night, a great comic book, a great movie, one of my favorite vampire movies. And very quickly, if there's anybody who's not familiar with it, it takes place in Barrow, Alaska, and where the sun sets for 30 days. And so the town is beset by a bunch of vampires, because what could be better for vampires than a place where the sun doesn't come up? Things happen. Not going to spoil the ending if you aren't familiar with it. But in this book, one of the main characters from the original story, Stella Ullman, or however you pronounce that last name, is trying to basically spread the word that vampires exist. And there's a government agent that seems to have quite the keen interest in this information. And the town of Barrow, Alaska, is preparing for the next long sunset because they're afraid that the vampires are going to come back. As I said, the comic book, it was a 3-issue miniseries written by Steve Niles. I believe the art is by Ben Templesmith. Don't quote me on that. Great comic book, and there's tons of sequels, comic books. Really good movie. Probably top 5 vampire movies for me. And then there's this series of novels. And there were some, I think there was like a short online series that continued the story as well. Online live action series, not like online series of prose stories or anything. Anyway, so if you're a fan of 30 Days a Night, pick up the books and read them. This is a nice continuation of the story, and there's a few more. I don't remember how many in the series, but 30 Days of Night, Rumors of the Undead, Steve Niles and Jeff Marriott. Excuse me. And that's everything I read in March of 2006. Question for the video: are you familiar with 30 Days of Night? Are you a fan? Have you read the comic or any of the comics? Have you seen the movie? Have you read any of the books? Of course, my answer is yes. I am a fan. I read the comic before the movie, and as I understand it, this may not be true, but my understanding is that Steve Niles originally pitched it as a movie, and nobody would pick it up, and so he decided to make it into a comic book. And then before again, this is all just what I've heard, but before the 3rd issue had even come out, the comic was so popular, he was able to sell the rights, the movie rights, for $1 million. You can verify that if you like. You can just take my word for it. But I'm telling you, I have not verified it. I've just read that in a couple of places. Anyway, yeah, I'm a big fan. Love the comic book. I've read some of the follow-up comic books. I believe there was a mini series written by Joe Lansdale, a 30 Days a Night mini. I don't think it was a one-shot, although it could have been. Anyway, he did. I'm pretty sure Joe Lansdale wrote one of the comics. And the movies in my top 10 vampire, or top 5 vampire movies. And the books, possibly the weakest part, but still worth reading. The books that I've read anyway. I wish I had them. I really want to get the novelization of 30 Days and Nights written by Tim Levin. And I'd really like to have a copy of that. But all of that being said, what do you think? Are you familiar with it? Have you seen it, read it, etc.? Let me know in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. And that's all I've got for this week. So until next week, read more books.